Thank you to everyone for joining us at this time of the term and on a Friday. We really do appreciate it. I think we all know that this is a very challenging time for our subject area, but there are also a number of significant opportunities. I'm sure that everyone was delighted to see the article in The Guardian this morning by Laura Spinney on the economic necessity of speaking languages for the future development of the four nations of the UK. Couldn't have come at a better time. This will feed into the further submission that we are making to the curriculum and assessment review. And hopefully that will be an important element in the way in which languages education develops. But it is clear that it's only by changing the discourse around languages that we can meaningfully ensure the future of our subject area. It's a long-term but very important process. So it's my enormous pleasure to introduce two of our colleagues who have been truly inspiring in the work that they've done in developing engagement with the study of languages. Claire Gorrara, Professor of French and Dean of Research and Innovation at the College of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences in Cardiff University, former head, of course, of the UCFL, and Lucy Jenkins, who has been the project director since 2017 of the MFL mentoring scheme. And they're going to discuss how the subject community as a whole can take this work forward. So, over to you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you ever so much for coming on this lovely Friday afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much. So Lisa and I are going to share our screen. We'll talk for about 35 minutes. We have two short videos during the presentation as well, which give you a sense of the project, both its ethos and also its impact. And then obviously we'll open up the floor for discussion afterwards. We're going to present jointly as we work as a team with the MFL mentoring project. So as Charles, quite rightly pointed out, obviously I'm the mentoring lead for MFL Mentoring. I began the project with other colleagues in 2015, funded by the Welsh Government. I'm Professor of French and I'm currently the Dean of Research for Innovation here at Cardiff University. Our colleague Lucy Jenkins, maybe a little brief profile just to outline the other project that you have down there, Lucy.
Yeah, so I'm the project director of MFL Mentoring, also based at Cardiff University, with Claire, who I have the great pleasure of working with, on love reading mentoring as well, a project funded by the Welsh Government to inspire a love of reading amongst primary school children, which has launched off the back of MFL Mentoring. I'm also currently the programme manager for Roots into Languages Cymru, but that's due to come to an end in the very near future.
Thanks, Lucy. So maybe going on to our next slide. So we're going to talk about a bit of the language context in Wales to give you a sense of where and how the project originated. What problem was it connecting to? What was the context for the project in terms of government priorities? Because again, this project is very much in response to government priorities and a government plan of work. Then give you a sense of the project itself, how it originated, how it currently operates, what its ethos is, and what the partnership model is at the heart of it, because it's very much a partnership model. Although based at Cardiff University, it is one has always been, in its very DNA, a model of partnership across the HE sector, but obviously with schools as well. We'll then give you a sense, and led by Lucy here, of the impact of the project. We had a recent report by Miller Research, an external organisation, on the project's impact over its 10 years, its current life cycle. And there's some interesting insights there from them about the impact on teachers, mentors and mentees, and also the impact in policy terms, which might be of interest to colleagues here. And then we'll end with some recommendations and learnings about what we've gleaned as the project team over the last 10 years, where we might think about thinking about extension or support for other parts of the UK or beyond, and what we might recommend in terms of project development elsewhere, both in the UK and more broadly. So we're going to begin with a brief video, which gives you a sense of the ethos of the project, made about 2 years ago now, just to give you a sense of why and how this project exists.
From the very beginning, we seek out ways to communicate with the world around us. We learn to play, to laugh, to walk and to talk, and sometimes to say nothing at all. We seek out ways to express ourselves, to understand. Simple gestures, a smile, a frown, a thumbs up, a wave, connect us to the world around us. Hello, bonjour, kaisho, shalom. So many ways to offer a bridge between you and me. The world can seem like an infinitely vast land, full of peoples and places that we may never reach nor understand. But luckily for us, the world is right here, in every single country, in every single town, in every single school. The world makes its mark on each of us. Look around you, listen to the sounds, savor the taste, embrace the vastness of this place we call home. With MFL mentoring, you'll discover that this is not just Wales. This is the world. MFL mentoring, opening doors to other worlds. Let the journey begin.
Thanks very much, Lucy. So that just gives you, I think, a brief sense, Colin, a bit of a flavour, and it's a very much a multi-sensory videos you've seen there about the flavours, the taste, the importance of languages. The project sort of comes from a belief to link languages to a broader multicultural, multilingual mindset, not only of Wales, beyond Wales, and more broadly. So in many ways, that gives a sense of the ethos from which the project evolves. Maybe the next slide, please, Lucy. Yeah, so just give you a sense of where we are in Wales at presently in terms of modern foreign languages. In Wales, called international languages, a reappellation that has come through the new curriculum for Wales, which is focused very much on bringing together English, Welsh, and what is called international languages. You can see here over a fairly long period of time, since the early 2020s, early 2010s, there's been a net decline in the uptake of a language at GCSE and, of course, at the A level. You can see here in 2023 the numbers of uptakes for first of all for GCSE. Obviously, with French being the most dominant language in Wales, it still is today, and with German in particular in a very difficult place. And the uptake now is just over 10% of young people doing a modern foreign language or international language at GCSE. And that's a drop from about 25% in 2015 when this project began. So we are looking at year-on-year decline at GCSE, a slight uptick this year in some of our languages, but in essence, a year-on-year decline, certainly since 2010. And one, of course, which generated the project, which was commissioned by the then Cabinet Secretary for Education in Wales, Hugh Lewis. In a similar way, you can see here a decline across A-level. Again, French is the majority A-level in Wales, with only 3% of all A-level students doing a modern foreign language at A-level. And this figure is actually very, very comparable for Welsh. So in some ways, the Welsh language, although compulsory at GCSE, is obviously in the same place of decline at A-level as international languages as well. So in some ways, there is a comparative convergent journey for Welsh as a other language in Wales at A-level as well. So again, a challenging situation, and one which is mirrored maybe not quite so stark terms in other parts of the UK. The next slide, please, Lucy. So, of course, where does it fit in terms of the Welsh Government strategy? So, again, the project began in 2015 in response to a very strong sense that there was a degrading situation for learning a language in Wales other than Welsh in schools. And as a result, the Welsh Government created its Global Future Strategy, which began in 2015. And that then trying to re-energise and, of course, support practitioners in Wales to improve the uptake and also the awareness and visibility of languages in the curriculum and beyond. It's had 3 iterations, the Global Future Strategy. It brings together education consortia in Wales. It brings together cultural institutes. Yeah, so just to recap, Global Futures, the Welsh Government strategy, going for 10 years now, has an additional year to 2026, and it began in response to this declining situation for languages. And there are 3, I think, key aims that are currently in its 3rd iteration. The one is about delivering meaningful international language provision in Wales. Note here, colleagues, no target for uptake. At no point in this 10-year position has there been any actual figures around uptake aspiration. And here we have a very strong sense of meaningful provision. A focus on skills, knowledge, and experiences to plan and deliver languages for our practitioner teacher grouping. So a very strong focus on the classroom experience. And then thirdly, one I think that we've been very, very keen to support challenging misperceptions or misconceptions around language learning. And that has obviously been part of our project to try and cultivate and trying to demystify what learning a language means. It's just about becoming a teacher or a translator, and it's also about looking at a language as a part of a lifelong journey of openness to the world. So we're in many ways part of all three of these aspirations, but the last one's where our project most aligns with the government strategy. Next slide, please, Lucy. And again, you can see here we're part of this overarching radical rethinking of a curriculum in Wales that began 2 years ago now, which looks to try and reconfigure the ways in which the curriculum serves and supports a student-centred curriculum. So there is no national curriculum in Wales. It is very much done on a school-by-school basis, responding to, I suppose, aspirations, principles, and progression steps within a larger programme. And then here is for a truly multilingual nation, really building on the bilingual aspirations and the bilingual expertise that we have here in Wales. And there are 7 areas of learning or 6 areas of learning and experience, one of which is languages, literacy and communication, and this brings together Welsh, English and international languages. And this has 4 key mission statements. Languages connect us. Understanding language is key to understanding the world around us. Expressing yourself through language is key to communication. And literature fires imagination and inspires creativity. So again, these are very much linked to English, Welsh, and an international language, and they're all about that openness to the world, communication, of course, cultural importance of literature here, determined to be in both film, graphic novels, poetry, but a sense of the importance of textual sources and visual sources to communicate the power of languages across the spectrum of speakers. Next slide, please. And again, so that's the context for Wales here. More aligned maybe with the Welsh with the Scottish context, but again responding to a declining uptake in terms of national qualifications, but a strong government focus on bringing together all of the language assets of Wales to try and mobilise around increased uptake. So our project, then next slide please, our project is very much about trying to encourage the uptake of a language at GCSE. It's done through a program of face-to-face mentoring and also online. And we bring together university students, both undergraduate and postgraduate students, with students in secondary schools who indicate in a pre-mentoring survey that they're unsure about doing a language for GCSE. The aim is to increase motivation to learn the language and to raise aspiration to going to university, because it begins a project to improve the uptake at GCSE, but we realise in the early years that our unsure students in our pre-mentoring surveys are often possibly less sure and aware of going to university as a life aspiration, and having a mentor from a university in that classroom can raise aspiration for further and higher education. The undergraduate and postgraduate students trained to be mentors go into schools just before a GCSE choice is made to try and enthuse those unsure students to do a language at GCSE. We do not teach languages. We do not teach the grammar of French or the vocabulary of Spanish. We try and advocate for all languages, both home, heritage and community, and Japanese, Maori, Spanish, any language that we feel will be pertinent to the classroom for those young people. And we try and really pick out the diversity and the richness of our languages around the world. And it's very much linked to the Welsh curriculum's approach to look at global citizenship. So again, using a language as a gateway, to use that term, to think about the world and a young person's place in it from much more multi-perspectival perspectives. So we're not looking at a language as literally an instrumentalist way to try and improve professional aspiration, but about an openness to the world and a greater awareness as a global citizen of Wales and the world. So it has that very strong multicultural, multilingual ethos, not learning a language for itself on its own, but as part of a much broader approach to global citizenship. Next slide. Again, so to get a really strong sense of what we do here, so the aim is to increase the uptake at GCSE of doing an international language. We began with Cardiff, Bangor, Aberystwyth and Swansea as the partner universities. Now we partner with all 10 Welsh HEIs, including the Open University as well as an external partner. We work with colleagues across broadly across Wales, and we generally train just under 1,000 students per year to be mentors in schools across Wales. We target students aged 11 to 13 in years 7 to 9 who are disinclined towards languages and who've been chosen by a baseline survey where they indicate they're unsure about doing a language for GCSE. And the teacher and the school therefore then choose from that a small subset to work with our mentors. We currently have worked with about 30,000 mentees in Wales. We have about 178 secondary schools in Wales. We work with about 172 of those. Again, we work with very much the vast majority of secondary schools in Wales. Both Welsh medium and English medium and bilingual. About a quarter of schools in Wales are Welsh medium, so we obviously work very much with those schools as well. And we work with those students across 2 6-week cycles in the school to try and improve that uptake and aspiration to do a language. And each group of mentees has 6 sessions with their chosen mentor, and they are very much about trying to bring that enthused mindset to be thinking about a language for both personal and longer-term professional aspiration. Each mentor is trained through 2 weekends in Cardiff and Bangor in particular to have that multilingual and that mentoring ethos very rigorously done via training. You can therefore get the end of our program accreditation as a mentor that we have through a Gorrara, an external accreditation organisation. We curate resources for the program too, which allow us to try and support our mentors with particular materials that help them make that case effectively in the classroom. And we're very much focused on the maybe students, the ones who are unsure and who really feel that they do sort of feel they might have, with that increased exposure to a mentor, they might have the chance to therefore think and flex their thinking about doing a language, using French rather than drama or Spanish rather than triple science. We're really trying to get those to flex their thinking about what the language could be for them as an appropriate approach for their education going forward. Next slide, please, Lucy. And I think we're going to talk about the impacts now through Lucy and where we think we've seen our impacts in terms of programme evaluation and our own sense of the programme as an ongoing project.
Brilliant deal, Claire. I'm going to touch on just some of the key impacts that we can evidence from the really extensive evaluation work that we undertake both internally and that we commission externally as well. And we'll come on to talk a little bit about the importance of that, both internal and external viewpoint that we always take, and how that's benefited us in terms of leveraging funding for this 10-year period that we are just coming to the end of. So as you can see here from this graph, we survey the children that have been mentored at the end of the mentoring cycle. And you can see the responses that we've had here to this survey at the end of the mentoring cycle for both 22-23 and 23-24. So the 23-24 cycle, we had just over 1,000 mentees respond to that survey. And you can see here how positively the learners are responding to their mentoring experience. So the question being, has your mentoring experience changed the way you think about language learning? And we've got 70 and 68% saying yes, 25-28% saying maybe, and then a very, very small minority indicating no. It links back to that ethos that Claire has talked about, and hopefully which was communicated through that video, which is really strongly linked to this sense of the mentoring evolving, transforming, and reaffirming this sense of language learning as something more than a transactional, functional endeavour. It is something that really transforms the way that you see the world. Of course, we are funded to try and increase the number of learners that are studying an international language at GCSE. And what we've always wanted to evidence, particularly against a picture where national decline has continued over this 10-year period, is how is the mentoring actually impacting? Because there's a sense, or there's a degree to which you could argue that, yes, the national picture suggests that we're still in decline, absolutely. What is the mentoring doing? Well, we know from both our baseline and our mentee exit surveys that there is a significant uptick in the number of learners that indicate that they are going to study an international language after they have been mentored. So you can see in the blue here, this is the number of learners that suggest definitely yes, probably yes, maybe, probably not, definitely not before their mentoring. And then the pink indicates that increase in each of those categories. You can see in particular the increase in the definitely yeses and the probably yeses. But even more significantly than that, the decrease in the number of learners that are saying probably not, and in particular, definitely not. So you can see that transition and that transformation in the thinking around their intention for studying an international language at GCSE. We commissioned an organisation, as Claire mentioned at the beginning, called Miller Research to undertake an evaluation that took a longitudinal view of the 9 years of data available at the point of commission, to really think about what has been achieved by the project over this breadth of time. It's quite a unique position to be in, to have had a project that has run for such a long period of time, and in the interests of helping others to understand that impact and to learn from that impact, we wanted to really think through what the impacts were over that period. So as you can see here, and I'm going to highlight 5 key impacts that Miller Research have indicated to us as forthcoming from their findings, that there has been a really significant positive impact on learners, boosting confidence, enthusiasm, and curiosity. And I think that links back very, very clearly to the stated aims and intentions of the programme. There is an increased awareness of transferable skills and cultural relevance. And really importantly, throughout the evidence that Miller Research have viewed, and it involved a number of focus groups, interviews, and a whole host of data that we've collated over the years, there is evidence that the mentor is an incredibly valuable part of the relationship that results in that positive and boosted confidence and enthusiasm. So you can see here, learner indications, the mentoring made me more interested in languages and culture outside of school. And we've got a really strong agreement over the course of 3 years of data, which has been analysed there. In terms of the mentors, and those of you that are in the higher education sphere will be really interested to think about that growth for our mentors. Our government funders are slightly less interested by that because they're very interested in the learner perspective and learner benefits. We are obviously very interested in what our mentors, our undergraduates and our postgraduates, gain from this experience. And you can see here the boost in confidence, organisational interpersonal skills, hugely enhanced employability, and to a degree inspiring their career choices, particularly around working with young people. So the graph there, I think, speaks to the extent to which mentors benefit from their engagement with the project. The evaluation also noted that the collaboration between university sector and schools really reaped rewards for our practitioner colleagues in schools and for us in higher education. So we have gone through a really extensive programme of developing resources, which has been incredibly beneficial to our school practitioners. And obviously that encouraged collaboration has resulted in that higher aspiration for transference into higher education, which I'll come on to talk about as well. And I think, interestingly, for the purposes of this session, the strategic alignment with the programme for government commitment to increase the number of students opting to study an MFL at GCSE has been very important, not least in a moment of real curriculum transformation here in Wales, where the new curriculum for Wales, or what was new and now is very much in train, the curriculum for Wales has radically changed the way that we consider the process of language learning. And that's been a really difficult thing for our teachers to grapple with, but nonetheless a really important part of shifting the dial for languages here in Wales so that we can effectively leverage the benefits of our bilingualism of English and Cymraeg alongside international languages. But you can also see here the resilience in terms of our shift during the pandemic and how that led to the development of a number of online resources which you can access freely on our website. I've also talked to you, we've also been, it's been highlighted to us, and you will all, I have no doubt, be aware of the crisis. I know we don't like to use that word, but where teacher recruitment is concerned, we are in a crisis position here in Wales. The project has actually had a really significant impact on encouraging our mentors to consider teaching as a career going forward. This was not one of our intended outcomes or intended impacts, but as the years have gone on, we've started to understand how many of them actually go on to do a PGCE and then go on to teach. So you can see here the evidence for that in the graph on the left. And then you can see the evidence on the right, the number of mentees that then consider going on to higher education because they've had that close contact with a role model from a university, and how critical that can be in really pushing and evolving and transforming their ideas about what is possible for them for the future. I'm just going to show this video really briefly, which will hopefully, because sometimes people think that it's a very amorphous kind of concept. What happens in the mentoring sessions? I know because I've seen them, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into what happens in those mentoring sessions and to give you the opportunity to hear from mentors, teachers, and children about the impact that it has on them. So without further ado, I will launch the video.
Salam, hola,
Bonjour,
Daniel.
guten Tag,
Ni hao, Shuai.
Dalun. Welcome to MFL.
MFL Mentoring is a pan-Wales project, a partnership across 9 Welsh universities, where we aim to increase the number of young people that are opting to study an international language at GCSE level. We're trying to motivate young people to see the value of international languages to the way that they live their lives. Rydyn ni'n recriwtio myfyrwyr ym mis Mawrth a Ebrill bob blwyddyn, a wedyn dyn ni'n dewis parau hoffwn i groesawu ddod i'r hyfforddiant lle maen nhw'n treulio penwythnos rili ffantastig, yn cael dysgu mwy amdano rôl, pam yn union maen nhw yma, a be yn union byddwn nhw'n gwneud pan maen nhw yn cael eu rheoli mewn ysgol.
I wanted to become an MFL mentor because
When I was in school, I had a really positive relationship with languages and a great support network with my teachers.
I love anything that's multicultural, where you can learn different frames of references and learn from different people with different identities.
And mae ieithoedd yn rhywbeth dwi'n caru a dwi eisiau rhannu dy gariad am ieithoedd I phobl eraill.
I believe in inspiring the next generation of students in Wales. I love languages, I love teaching, so it was the best combination for me.
Following the training, the MFL mentoring team spent some time putting together the mentors and the schools into appropriate matches. We then link our schools and our mentors, and the mentoring journey begins.
Hello, my name's Callum and I'm an MFL mentor at Bramall Foundation School.
Fy enw I yw Naomi Hensy. Ar hyn o bryd rwyf yn gwirfoddoli yn Ysgol Gyfun Gwynlliw fel mentor. Penderfynais I fod yn mentor oherwydd fel myfyriwr ieithoedd dwi'n angerddol iawn am rannu y profiadau sydd ar gael o ganlyniad I ieithoedd.
My standout moment was when the students that said to me at the very start, I hate languages, I will never do it, it's going to be a waste of time, to actually students that were going out into the world saying, I want to learn languages, not just the ones that are on the curriculum.
My favourite activity of a mentoring has probably been learning Arabic, because usually in school you wouldn't learn that language, you just learn French, Spanish and Welsh. Heddiw, astudio ni beth mae diwylliant yn cael ei throsglwyddo trwy bwyd. Hoff peth fi yn sesiwn mae mentora yw sut mae Naomi yn gwneud hwylus I dysgu am sut mae gwledydd eraill yn byw.
Mae disgyblion nawr yn hoffi cael dialog a traddodiaethoedd, a mae'n rhoi lot fawr o peter iddyn nhw, a mae'n dangos iddyn nhw faint o fantais yn barod I fod yn ddwyieithog.
Mae sesiynau mentor wedi cant y cant helpu fi I cael y dealltwriaeth o beth I wneud a beth fi'n gallu wneud yn y dyfodol.
They suddenly realise that there's a whole world beyond their doorstep. Most of them often ask me, can they do it again when the sessions are finished, which is really great.
I took from my experience as a mentor last year that the work we're doing is so very important. I saw the transformation from a group of 9 students last year who hated languages to 9 that were heavily considering doing it at GCSE.
Mae yna ddatganiad gan Nelson Mandela dwi wir yn hoffi a mae'n pryd ydych chi'n siarad I berson mewn iaith mae'n ei ddeall, mae'n mynd i'w pen. Ond pryd ydych chi'n siarad I berson yn ei iaith ei hun, mae'n mynd i'w galon. A mae hynna jyst yn adlewyrchiad o pa mor bwerus ydy ieithoedd. Un gair I ddisgrifio mentora yw inspirational fun.
Thought-provoking.
We'll describe mentoring as something that is worthwhile and any person at any point of their life needs to try it out.
The real results, I think, are very evident in the increased take-up of the language of those who are mentored, but also in a very strong belief that we're promoting Wales as a multi- and bilingual nation.
Os ydych chi ddim wedi trio hwn o'r blaen, gwnewch mae'n werth fawr iawn, a dwi'n meddwl bod o'n rhywbeth unigryw I ni o fewn ysgolion uwchradd yng Nghymru hefyd.
When you see a young person in school really click, a light bulb moment when they can see that actually speaking French, German or Spanish can actually change their view on the world and give them greater opportunities, that's when you realise that all the work and the commitment, the passion has been worth it.
It enhances our young people's outlook. It gives them somebody to aspire to be in the future, and it pushes them forward on their personal journey to become the citizens of Wales and the world.
Audio.
Adios.
Auf Wiedersehen.
I love that video, colleagues. I think that's all said it all. It tells you about the wonderful mentors, the mentees, and the wonderful teachers with whom we work to really make the project work from a sort of like completely 360-degree way. So maybe a brief ending here now, and then we have a short time here to talk about some of the outcomes from the project and also maybe some of our learnings. I think we wanted to put here effectively, the 6 key outcomes. The first one is that really for us, one of the outcomes has been a partnership with Welsh Government and the school sector in Wales. We create like a virtuous set of circles of support. We've got a very, very strong rapport with our different teacher practitioners and obviously those working on the ground in the classroom. And we know that it's very tough to be an MFL teacher in Wales at the moment. So that very strong partnership working, I think, gives us a great sense of that working as one system to support modern foreign languages. We've also, I think, had very good data-rich evidence on the way in which our projects work within the school sector and giving a very, very much a practitioner-focused approach. So although we are very much informed by research in the field, we've got a very strong data set to give us a really clear sense of what's working on the ground, what doesn't work, and why and how our project might be a generator of improved uptake of languages. I think thirdly, another outcome has been that we've extended the project to other disciplines and other priority areas. We've worked with a sister project in physics to look at physics mentoring. We've extended a mentoring model to look at the primary school tech sector and literacy. And we've also worked potentially with colleagues in Wales as well, in Welsh, to improve attitudes towards Welsh in the secondary school system too. So in many ways, the mentoring model is very agnostic of subject. It can be extended and used with other different areas to really enthuse young people and connect them to their learning experience. Fourthly, a very strong focus on international partnerships. We're currently piloting the project in New Zealand, and we have done in Spain to look at that link between the Indigenous language base in New Zealand and a language pipeline in the secondary schools in the Hamilton area. And then fifthly, we've also had a very strong focus on teaching materials. Lucy pointed out in her earlier part of the presentation, we've worked very hard to create and curate materials that can support our teacher base in the primary and secondary sector, drawing on the learnings from the mentoring experience, both the training and the student base. And then lastly, and maybe to come to in questions, we've also looked to develop a spin-out company. We've looked at training and consultancy around what our multilingual mindset and the mentoring ethos could bring in terms of improving linguistic diversity, not only in the school sector, but in large organisations in the public and the private sector as well. And then lastly, I think really around some of our learnings and our recommendations. I mean, why does it work? Why has it worked? Why has it been a success? The first one has been absolutely partnership working. You've got to be in it for the long haul. We've been working with schools for 10 years now, some of our schools, about adapting and flexing to the needs and, of course, the different priorities of our funder. They're working hard to understand and work in synergy with partners has been absolutely key. And not going into a school 1 year and coming out again, sustaining and maintaining those partnerships. Secondly, another key learning, leveraging collaboration. We've worked across sectors, the private and the public sector, the HE sector and the state school sector, leveraging missions with the Welsh Government and, of course, also our funders, and also looking across nations. We've also worked in England with the DfE around Language Horizons too. So in other words, working on that, leveraging the power of the connection and maintaining that cross-sectoral approach, not being only funneled through the Welsh system, but looking to leverage collaboration across a whole series of sectors. Thirdly, absolutely key learning, the absolute core value of having independent evaluation. We've always had people from outside evaluate our project, even from the very beginning, the first year. It's so key for leveraging support and leveraging funding to have that external viewpoint and perspective to try and help us understand, and obviously our funder understand, what we bring to it as a disinterested evaluator. So that's a really important part of it. Fourthly, take a very strong evidence-based approach. From the very beginning, we've always been based on evidence. We always survey, talk to, listen to our mentors, our mentees, and our teachers. So it's always an evidence-based approach. And of course, Lucy and the team, who are fabulous, they change, they evolve, they recalibrate all of their learnings every year and the training to take account of the evidence base of the previous year. So we're never sitting on our laurels. We're always looking to inform and innovate based on evidence from our surveys and our focus group work. So again, always being attuned to and agile to the evidence base. And then fifthly, maybe it's evident from the presentation, maybe also from the videos, we're quite entrepreneurial. We're quite keen to look at different funding alternatives. We work with colleagues in Oxford, we work with colleagues in Stirling, we work with colleagues in Leeds. We definitely work to be much more entrepreneurial around funding. And we look for ways to advocate, sustain and scale what we do. So we're never, in many ways, only looking at one particular perspective and viewpoint. We're very keen to be looking at the variety of ways in which the project can evolve, both in terms of a publicly funded project, but also looking at it as a potential as a spin-out company to try and, as it were, share and disseminate the learnings and the benefits to a broader community of potential investors. So we're also very keen to be minded about the plurality of perspectives and of the outlooks that can evolve from a project like this one. I think that's us, isn't it? I think that's us. If you want to come and visit our website, have a look at what we've done, look at our evaluations, our sister projects, and of course, some of our research. And there are our contact details if you want to get in contact with either of us about the project and what it might have achieved and what its ambitions are for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire and Lucy. That was terrific. I'm very familiar with this project. I went to an absolutely packed meeting in the Welsh Parliament at the end of last year, and it was amazing to see the resonances that this has across every level of society, politics, educational sector, the business sector. It's terrific, and I think it is a real example of where languages should be. The question is, in part, how we can take this further forward so that it becomes basic and infrastructural for everyone. But yeah, questions. Right, Derek, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Charles, and thanks, Claire and Lucy. Was it the very interesting presentation? And very inspiring. So my question is, to what extent have you worked with other groups that go into schools? So there are quite a number of organizations already that go into schools to work with people and to with young people to try to encourage them to take up languages or language related area studies. So have you worked with other organizations? Have you shared some of your methods? Can they become a kind of auxiliary force that can help expand the project in certain ways? That's the first question. The second question is working with school teachers, and you mentioned the kind of critical resources that you've been able to build up and share with teachers. How did you go about doing that? And just say a little bit more about the benefits of that, please.
Thanks, Doug. Maybe if I take the first question, maybe let's get the second question. Yeah. So many thanks for that first question, Joe. Yeah. So we have worked with other language focused advocacy networks, and we've also worked, I think, with groupings who are keen on promoting opportunities for underserved communities. So I think on the first one, we have worked, for example, obviously with Roots into Languages Cymru, which was based at Cardiff and Bangor University, and we'll be moving to another university in Wales in the coming months. So we have shared the methodology with the Roots networks. I know that probably as part of UCFL, our colleagues who led for Roots Cymru may well have shared some of the materials and the ethos there. So we have worked with, again, a very important, England and Wales-based network there as well. We've also worked with groups in Wales, one called Reaching Wider, which is an organisation that supports young people from underserved backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds, and work with them to work with particular schools where there's been a high challenge around uptake for a language, but also greater educational difficulties. And we've worked with them, and they do put mentors, 2 or 3 months into those Reaching Wider partnership schools funded by Welsh Government to try and improve and sustain that partnership between the university, the local university, and the mentor projects. We work with those as well. We've also worked with individual universities across the UK who have wanted to work in particular with schools outreach. We work with Stirling, we work with Leeds as part of AHRC facing projects, and we've actually worked with them as almost like a training organisation to train up their undergraduate and postgraduate students to deliver some of the projects linked to AHRC funding. So we have worked as almost like a consultancy and a trainer for other humanities projects where there's a focus on university students working with schools to take forward the objectives of a particular research grant. And then, of course, we have worked with colleagues in Scotland on their Explorathon projects. We work with Silk Cymru colleagues there, and we've shared some of our learnings with the Silk Cymru colleagues in Scotland. And we work with colleagues in England and in New Zealand, looking at pilot projects which might take forward partnerships with schools there. But that answer tells you, Derek, that we've worked with a lot of different people. We haven't worked with one other group like the Welsh Government because it's very dispersed. So we've actually worked on a very much a needs and a needs basis with people who've come to us. There hasn't been an equivalent doorway of, like a doorway into particularly, the UK funders. So we haven't worked with the UKRI in a particularly straightforward session. We haven't taken a research grant. There was a project in essence. And we worked with England through the Department for Education on a pilot that wasn't taken forward due to COVID-19. So it's very dispersed as to who we've worked with. We've very much worked on a needs and responsive model. There hasn't been a comparator group like the Welsh Government that's come to us, apart from the DfE, in a short period of time, look at replication across a larger region of space. So we'd be much more like, as it were, piloting and sampling, and that same with the consultants is allow us to be much more systematic and work in a much more coordinated way by the consultants in the company with potential groupings who might want to work with us on a more sustainable basis. So that's the broad answer to that one there. It's been very much on a needs basis, but then it's about trying to work in a much more connected way with larger scale requests and support. Over to you for the resources question, Lucy.
And maybe just to pick up as well that we're obviously Welsh Government funded, so all of the staff associated with the project are funded to deliver the deliverables associated with our grant from the Welsh Government. And as such, we have associated with organisations that allow us to enhance what we can deliver through that grant. So I think it's really important as well that, and it's one of the limitations to a certain extent, that my job is funded to deliver for Wales. My colleagues' jobs are funded to deliver for Wales. So we just have to be mindful about where the ethical lines there lie in terms of how we are helping others, where we are supporting when people are employed to deliver a specific set of grant activity. And then there's a whole connected problem about how you bring money into the university to deliver other work outside of that core remit. And that's where the consultancy and training spin-out company has really come from, to allow us to do that more innovative work in different partnerships that isn't limited by what we can do within our core roles at the university. So just to kind of elaborate on that. In terms of the resources, we've gone through a really extensive process with the Welsh Government and with the practitioner body in Wales. So have run extensive focus groups, extensive surveying with teachers in Wales and across Wales to understand what they need from us to support them to deliver the requirements of Curriculum for Wales, noting, of course, that Curriculum for Wales is very much about the specific school context. So no resources that we create are designed to be prescriptive or to designate a particular curriculum for Wales. They are there to inspire, to be adapted, to be amended by schools as per their school context. Please feel free to take a look on our website. There are extensive resources there for you to see what that looks like for us. They're very multilingual with a clear focus as well on Spanish, German and French as the 3 core languages taught in schools in Wales. But yeah, they are co-created. The resource from that has really come from the successful delivery of the mentoring project, the resources of which are obviously very multilingual, very much about raising language awareness, and that has been translated into these openly accessible classroom resources that are available on the website, many more of which are in the pipeline. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Derek, but happy to have further conversations about the resources.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Claire. Very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. And they're all open access, Derek. And again, because it's Welsh Government funded, everything that we produce for the Welsh Government has to be open access. So there can be no firewall, and therefore everything that we produce, in terms of the teaching materials, is available for any colleagues, I think, to download from our website. Yeah.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Thanks very much. Figured out how to raise my hand. Thank you so much, Claire and Lucy. It's brilliant to hear about this amazing project again. I wanted to ask about the ripple effect and to what extent you, like, part of the mentoring is kind of encouraging the mentors to become like ambassadors for languages within their school, and or whether it really is focusing in on that group. So just anything around how it goes beyond the group and sort of filters through into the wider school community. Thanks.
Yes, maybe I'll start there. I'm sure Lucy will come in. Yeah. So from the very beginning, in the very early days, was 27 mentors going into 14 schools across Wales, and from very early on, we had realised that actually when the mentor goes into the classroom to work with the mentees, there's first of all the slight anxiety if you're a mentee, why have I been chosen, right? And there's a slight anxiety to begin with. But then when it becomes very clear to the mentees, it's about having an almost extracurricular experience that will give them, as it were, a different perspective on languages, on education, meeting a near-peer mentor. The near-peer mentor has been a very key part of the programme's success. That creates excitement. And then the students ask, what did you do in your classroom? What did you learn? And often we were trying to make sure that the learnings are about maybe areas of languages that aren't on the curriculum, that are differently configured. And the ripple effect was very, very clear from very early on. So other kids would say, well, can you tell us what you learned in that classroom? Or Miss, what did X learn with Jane, who came in from Aberystwyth University? So the ripple effect was very, very clear. And as we've gone on, I think that ripple effect has been made clearer because actually, as the program's developed, we have also developed, Lucy can talk about this, we've also developed whole school workshops, which mentors can go in to deliver, whole class workshops rather, which allow a wider group than the mentees from the surveys to benefit from the learnings and the approach of the mentorship program. So we have, as it were, alongside the classic mentoring approach of 5 to 8 young people in the classroom with a mentor for 6. We also have larger scale full class mentoring sessions that support schools whereby they don't have capacity to provide that additional time for the mentoring, and or they want to reach a wider grouping in the classroom. And certainly I think through the report from Miller Research, the ripple effect is not only amongst the mentees, also amongst the mentors. Of course, they obviously communicate with each other. We have some learnings about what they're going to do career-wise. We have sort of going to become teachers elsewhere who keep in contact with us. So the ripple effect actually also pertains to the mentors and what they go on to do beyond teaching. They talk about it being a really key skill in an interview. The mentoring gave them the confidence in an interview to provide a different perspective on themselves as a university student than the other applicant going into the interview after them. So it's had quite profound professional benefit for mentors going on to develop the skills to become a young professional in an interview and in a non-teaching environment. So there's been multiple benefits, the ripple effect, that go beyond the mentees themselves. But you might want to come in here, Lucy, particularly about the language workshops, which I know have been one of those ripple effect outcomes of us having a strong feedback to make the project more visible and more available to more students.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I think, the workshops were something that was developed in response to that need and desire that was demonstrated by other children that came to learn that their peers were engaging with a university student in particular. That was the real kind of interest aspect, and then obviously the languages aspect followed that. I think it's also worth saying that as an annually funded project, despite the fact we've been going for 10 years, there has always been a moment, and we're in it right now, where we were not sure if we were going to carry on. That has limited the extent to which we have been able to follow learners through the cycle. So I don't know to what extent the learner that was engaged with in 2017, I'm not sure where that mentee has gone. And that is one of the sadnesses, I think, of the limitations linked to that annual funding cycle, which has disallowed us from being strategic in that evidence capture. We do know anecdotally, I've had students come through to Cardiff University to apply to be mentors who were mentored in year 8 and year 9. I've had a good maybe 10 of those come through the door now. So we're starting to see that ripple effect, but further work really needs to be done to understand the long-term impact on mentees through their life cycle. But that is just a fact of the way that the funding has fallen for us.
Very familiar with that scenario. Yeah, thanks ever so much to both.
Katrina.
Hi. Thank you so much. Oh, I don't know. Take my hand down. Thank you so much, Lucy and Claire, for that. That was amazing and very inspiring. I just wanted to ask a question about evaluation and how much evaluation is like centralized and how much you like equip the mentors to carry out evaluation in schools when they're there themselves. I don't know, like if you do that, if you could say a bit more about that, or how you do it.
I'll leave that one. I think for Lucy, I think we do. The mentors do self-evaluate all the time, and on a weekly basis. It's my understanding through the 6-week cycle. But I'll let Lucy maybe respond to that question.
Yeah, thanks, Catriona. So we've evolved the approach to the evaluation over the years, and it's definitely become more robust and rigorous as the years have progressed. So you'll note that a lot of the data comes from 2020 onwards, because we've just extended the amount that we are collating. So we ask mentors to do mentee exit surveys with the learners, paper-based or online, and we provide instructions about how they can carry that out in the best possible way. Mentors complete an application form, which is very detailed, and they have to do a mentor exit form when they complete the programme. Teachers do an application form, and they have to do the application form to be considered, and then they have to do an exit survey as well. So we're collating as best as we can data right at the beginning of engagements through and then at the end of engagement. Mentors also complete a weekly check-in after their sessions, and they comment on which resources have they used and were they effective. And that then helps us to iterate the resources and the content, as well as the management and the process-based things associated with the mentoring on an annual basis. So we're constantly collecting information to the point that I've never had capacity to actually use it in the way that I would really like to. We are going to be publishing a dashboard with some of our learner data very soon, which I'd really encourage people to engage with, and that's a very exciting development. But yeah, there's a real mix of things. So when we have the external evaluators come in, they conduct interviews, they do focus groups, and they use all of the data that we've collated via our surveys. So yeah, the onus is on us as a team. The onus then is on the independent evaluator, and the mentor really as lower onus on them as possible, actually, because the key role that I want them to play is to be the fun person in the room that can really model that exciting engagement with languages and cultures.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we're just waiting, and as you know, these sessions always end rigorously on time, so we've got another 10 minutes or so to keep talking. Now, just thinking about how one takes this work forward, if one were to do some blue skies thinking, in every part of the UK, one will be thinking of a project like this, which is really using the resources of universities, their connections with schools, disseminating a broader, more inclusive idea of language learning. But how does one get there? I mean, in some respects, in order to do a project like this and to show the dedication for such a long time and to see its results, you have to really dedicate a lot of time to this without question. And in some respects, it's difficult for academics to think that they should invest in an initiative like this when they've got the research excellence framework breathing down their necks, or various things that they need to do. So it's in a way you have to rebel against things like the ref in order to sort of see the wider picture and do something like this and commit to that. So the obstacle that we do face are time, resource, and also just making sure that one sees the bigger picture. So 2 questions there. Well, how does one deal with these obstacles? And is it possible to sort of think about a basic toolkit that one could take to various places in the UK and say, this is what we've done, this is what you could do, this is the kind of resource that you need to dedicate to it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does, Charles. Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to take those, those 2 questions and do come in, Lucy. I think for the first one, I think for us, it's been possible because we've had a funder for 10 years who's provided us with the funding to have wonderful Lucy in her role and an increasingly super team of colleagues who are experts. So I want to make it very clear, this is not, I'm not sure that you would say this, it's not a dilettante project. This is a deeply research-informed project that requires and has required colleagues who've run with the project now for like 5 to 7 years, who have a very deep skill set in both schools outreach, mentoring, but also languages and language awareness. And again, we are obviously a research-informed project with research publications. So I think the first thing to say is that, it's very difficult to envisage the depth and breadth of this project without having developed a really core set of highly skilled colleagues who are able to evolve the project as it goes forward. And that has involved, my first point in my outcomes, partnership building with a funder with whom we are in close synchronicity, meeting the needs that they see. I think it's very hard to envisage the depth and breadth and the sustainable engagement with this project without partnership building with that funder or that organisation, and without the amazing skill sets and the evolving professionalism, involving professional, and development of our colleagues in the team. So that's the first thing. And that's not the right answer, Charles. That's the honest answer to the question, really. I think the second thing, obviously, that you need is, and I think this has been a really important thing, I didn't put it in the slides, is that we work on a cooperation and not a competitive basis. So all Welsh universities who have languages in their departments, or not now, because almost only 4 unis in Wales have a language department. The rest of the 9 on that slide, and the rest of the colleges on the rest of the unis on that slide have no language department, no language provision at all. We're working on a coalition of the willing and the virtuous. So there isn't a competitive element here. We work basically the benefit of the student in the classroom in Merthyr or the student in the classroom in Denbighshire. So it's very important. The ethos is about not competition and hierarchy, but about working in a collaborative model. That's worked very well, that collaborative ethos. And of course, that's also been supported by the funder, who is obviously the Welsh Government. So I think that's a really important part, is agreeing to come together for the benefit of all and for no one institution's advantage. Now, I know that's a difficult one at the moment, but it is about the collective benefit for the young person in the school down the road, effectively. And that's not easy, but I think it does really benefits in terms of an altruistic approach to the project, which I think it is there at its heart. Well, I think thirdly, in terms of how to make it work, I think, there would have to be, I think, some form of concerted interinstitutional understanding that a number of institutions would agree together to prioritise it. So the physics mentoring project that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that required 5 Welsh HRs to come together with some Welsh Government funding to put in kind support. That was not easy. And I've got much credit to the colleagues who lead that project. They've now got fuller funding from the Welsh Government, but are relying on 5 institutions to support physics A-level and the uptake for young women at physics A-level. That was the aim. That wasn't easy, trying to have that interinstitutional work, because you've got to have some sense that it's strategically to the benefit of the institution to come together in that instance without an external funder who's going to provide the majority of the funding. So it is tough, but you've got to be in it for the long haul. And I think you need leaders prepared to invest in it for the long haul. But it also requires, I think, an alignment with an external organisation, in this case, a devolved government, where they're going to provide that longer term support. Because, what we don't want is to be in and out of a school, be in 1 year, project collapses, 2 days, you come in again. We do not work on that. We work on a sustainable, trusted relationship with our schools. We're going to be here. If we're not going to be here, we'll tell them, but we work on that trusted partnership model. Lisa, do you want to come in here about that, and also maybe around the idea maybe of a toolkit, for example, that might be something to return to?
Yeah, I think we haven't been at loggerheads with REF because we were an impact case study in 21. So because of the way that we have worked, where we have been very rigorous and evidence-based and have developed research from the work, we have managed to align, I think, with the needs of sitting within a university and all of the pressures that come with that. So it hasn't been at loggerheads with it. It's something that we've managed to use to our benefit, because we also have to justify our place in the university. So, and in current times, that is something that will come to be of a more pressing conversation and a more urgent conversation. So we've always had that awareness, I think, of we are sat in a university. Claire is obviously an academic in the university. I'm a professional services colleague in the university. But that collaboration between us to develop research that is very much action-based research has been really powerful and has allowed us to have a place and a standing as researchers in our school and in our university. To come on to the point about I suppose, expertise and resource. These projects are never going to be low resource. I would be doing myself a disservice if I said that you can just pick it up and you can go away and you can do it. There is expertise and knowledge that has gone into the generation of the project over a number of years, learnings from our students, from our mentors, from our teachers that have directly inputted and continue to input into the design of the project. So I think there is a need, and that expertise requires mentoring, understanding. It requires language learning knowledge. So I have 2 ex-teachers on my team. I have 3 ex-mentors on my team. I have created and curated a team that have a really deep knowledge of a variety of different subject areas that need to come together to make this successful. So I think that's a really important thing to say, and to say that resource has been a key part of our success. I have to have a salary, my team have to have a salary. If that salary isn't there, we are not there, to put it very, very bluntly. And whilst Claire would do a wonderful job, I have no doubt about it, she wouldn't be able to do the work of 8 women. Maybe 5, but not 8. So yeah, and again, I know that's not the response that people want. We want to be able to do everything on the shoestring and make it work. But there is a reality to it all, that there is funding underneath this, and it has been sustained. And that has allowed us this growth and this scalability. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I could go on for a while, so I'll cut myself off.
Thank you. Derek, you wanted we to go on for another 5 minutes or so. Derek, you've got your hand up.
Thanks very much. Yeah, appreciate the chance to come in again. So I'm just thinking about other models, and I sort of lower, where funding is not quite so free flowing or in as large an amount as the Welsh government's provided. So universities already have existing schools liaison teams. They have student ambassadors. Some of them will have student language ambassadors trained up. So is an alternative model where there's less funding available to kind of piggyback off existing schools outreach work from universities. They already have the relationships with the schools and the teachers. Have you tried any of that? Or would it not work? Would it be too complicated? You've obviously got a model where you work directly, you hire student mentors directly, and you deal with schools directly. But I wonder if you've done anything that's been more sort of via the university's existing setups.
A good question. We have done some of that, Derek. I mean, we did pilot a project, didn't we, in England, Lucy, in the West Midlands and East Yorkshire, and we did work there with university outreach colleagues in particular faculties, particularly at Sheffield, Hallam, Coventry, and Warwick. We have obviously worked with some of the mentoring ethos as part of our language ambassador support for Roots into Language Cymru. It is possible, and it would be a lower resource and lower cost. I suppose maybe another to put in the picture is that when we do go into schools with the mentors and we are working with the young people, inevitably, and Lucy can come in here, inevitably, there's a lot of pastoral care support required for the mentors. Because, they are going into schools and we need to make sure they have a very strong sense of the school they're going into, the environment, the context. I certainly find when I go into the mentoring office at Cardiff, a lot of the mentors get very connected to the project. They feel very strongly connected to the team and the ethos. So I don't want to underestimate the fact that, we're not an in and out people. It's doable, but I think you would probably dilute, and maybe that's the opportunity part of it. You probably dilute some of the proximity that the mentors have to the schools and to the teachers, and also to that continuity of support. Because, going in via language ambassadors in a year-on-year training, outreach course, probably doable. But I think the longevity and the proximity and support is what makes it as successful as it is. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think it would be a different type of project, probably less research informed, almost certainly, would collect less data and probably be much more about a pre-packaged, that's not a bad thing, a resource that goes in, and we have to then put in the resource at the uni level, then get the research and how successful it's been. So you'll probably be eliminating large parts of the research element, and you might have less of the proximity with the school, which drives the long-term commitment of Mrs. Jones to keep coming back. But you hear some of that. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would be a different iteration, probably more diluted, but it would still have its impacts. That's my sense, Lucy, but you might want to come in there and comment.
I think it's an interesting one. I think leveraging, we have worked with the Widening Participation Department, and we do for a small pot of funding that they offer to us to increase the number that goes into the number of mentors that go into widening participation schools. But you've got to have them strategically on board. I'm not sure that for my WP department or my school's outreach department at Cardiff University level, note our current circumstances, that it would be strategically attuned to what they wanted to deliver. They want to deliver on dentistry, medicine, and other subject areas. So whilst I have decent powers of persuasion, I can't make them engage with languages at the level that I want. So it's that deep penetration that we get because of the 6 sessions. So it's not a one session with 300 kids in the assembly. It is 6 sessions with 8 kids. That is such a novel, such a unique opportunity. It is resource intensive, absolutely. But do we get more impact than an assembly with 300 children and one person presenting? So it's a choice. It's a choice about models of engagement. It's a choice about what is available to us. And obviously the evidence base that we have collated and managed to curate over the years is telling us that this close, intimate, long-term engagement with schools and mentees and mentors reaps significant rewards for those parties. So we've managed to carry on leveraging the funding for it. So I would never step back from this because I know from that close engagement that it's the most impactful. But if that funding isn't there, absolutely, there needs to be ways to think about how do we take the best parts to meet your specific needs. So it has to be about that. What's your priority of needs here? What's your list? And what do we chop off as we reduce the money?
Thanks very much. Very, very helpful.
So just in the concluding few minutes, I mean, I love Louise's suggestion in the chat. Can one envisage a series of hubs of MFL mentoring projects that would be great for our subject community, for the wider development of the 4 nations of the UK? So perhaps just a last reflection on that. But also one of the things that comes across very strongly is the emphasis on seeing languages in global perspective, both here and in the world more broadly. It also, in some respects, what you're doing really does talk about the ways in which the subject community is developing, needs to develop, and needs, to refer to the article this morning in The Guardian, really to be thinking about global perspective and languages in that. So some final reflections, Claire and Lucy.
Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, again, I couldn't support more strongly your statement there. I think it is about we don't teach GCSE French. We're not teachers in that sense. It's about inspiring young people to think beyond a transactional approach, as you said, which I think can be very withering in terms of motivation. It's about motivation and also making the most of an incredible resource, which is our students. Not necessarily students or linguists. Only 1/3 of our mentors now are actually doing modern languages. They're doing biochemistry, engineering, physics. But they all have an interest in either a home heritage and community language, or they've got a love of languages that come from other parts of their lives. So it shows us a young person, age 14, don't have to go on to do French for a degree. They have a strong belief, desire, and passion for language as part of your broader development as a person. So I think it's that image of language outside the classroom in a global context, part of the broader enrichment of yourself and your career that I think really resonates, even with a 14-year-old whom you might think of as disinclined. 14-year-olds are clever people, they're not idiots, and they actually understand that when they're looking at their future opportunities, they want to think about what are the enrichment benefits that come from it. And that's what the project shows them. So it's not about saying if you do French, you're going to get a great job. No, it's about if you do French and you're aware of languages, you're going to open your mind to things that give you that greater perspective and richness on the world. And I think that's what we do effectively. How about you, Lucy?
Our data shows us that children are actually really curious about languages, contrary to the national picture. When we survey our children, and we've surveyed over 30,000 of them over the last couple of years, 50% of them say that they're interested in languages other than those taught in school. And they come up with a whole panoply of languages that they would like to learn or are interested to engage with. So I think we do our children a disservice to a large extent in suggesting that they're not curious. They absolutely are. We just aren't necessarily engaging with them in the global way that they want us to. So the multilingual global citizenship aspect and framework, which underpins everything that we do, is really, really key to speaking to that need, that desire that they are expressing to us. And that's where the evidence really speaks volumes. I think the note on the toolkit, absolutely, I think that would be a wonderful thing, and it's absolutely something that we could contribute to. I think it's again worth noting we are funded by the Welsh Government, so I can't spend my time developing a toolkit for use around the UK. So there has to be money to do that. And again, that's a fact. We give of our time as best as we can. But I just think it's really important that we refer back to that ethical obligation that we have to serve Wales because of the funding that we have. And I'm a bit of a broken record on that one. And I think finally, yeah, mentoring works. We know it works. So why wouldn't we invest in it? How we persuade people to invest in it is another matter when languages seem to be a low priority. But I think with concerted effort and use of the evidence in really strategic ways, we can do a damn good job of it. So I think, yeah, more strategic alignment, more emphasis on that multilingual global citizenship dimension, and yeah, that collaboration to make it work for all.
Thank you. That was terrific. This is an inspiring, future-looking example of where we need to be and where we can be with the example of work of this dimension, magnitude, and power. So I'd just like to conclude by thanking everyone for coming. For Kathy, my colleague, Kathy Collins, for making everything possible, and to Claire and Lucy for their truly inspiring work and presentation. There is a recording of this, and we will be referring to it a lot in the future. Thank you so much.